And as Jim said, just to finish off, to do all this storage investigation and this liability operation needs the visibility of the carbon dioxide price and the UK carbon price, which is right now, around the dilemma in the electricity market for what price that's going to give for this low carbon electricity. That needs to be secure and guaranteed into the future, or else no projects at all will occur.
Thanks, Jim.
Oh, no, Q&A.
Fine, okay. Right, over to you then, and if you would mind saying who you are and where you're from, starting with Richard, thanks.
I guess I'm Richard Black from the BBC. I guess I've got two big sort of questions. One is what you referred to at the end of that interview. Is it true to say that basically, without a decent carbon price, CCS won't happen? Is that true?
That's right, because there's no compelling legislation which says that companies have to fit, are mandated to fit carbon dioxide capture. And as we say in this report, that's a very understandable and correct position from the government, because historical analogues show that you can't just pass a law to make people fit a new technology. We've got digitalisation example, case studies, a good example of that. And that's why it's entirely correct now for government to be putting public money into this to bring forward these commercialisation or demonstration projects so that everybody can experiment and show that this works. When those are run through, we'll all have a much better idea about the costs and the viability of that.
Sorry, can I just add to that? In the CCS case, mandating would just mean that investors will go for other options at the moment because they've got a lot more certainty. You don't necessarily need a carbon price in the sense that the UK's plan is to have this thing called electricity market reform, which is long-term contracts for electricity. So that's, although there's a carbon price wrapped up in that process and the price floor, as many of you probably know already, that contract, if the price is good enough for electricity that's going to be bought by the agency, then that will also potentially finance those amounts. So it's not necessarily, in a way, they're doing that because the carbon price is not.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's also a mismatch of timing between the electricity market reform, which will come after the bidders need to bid in for these 3 or 4 carbon capture projects. So the contract for the electricity price, the cleaned up electricity price, needs to be negotiated with a set of bidders before the electricity market reform becomes a legal act.
Yes.
As Parliament. Yes.
And I guess the other question I have is simply, why does it matter that Britain does this itself? We've got Germany doing projects, Norway's got a project, China's got a project. Is it not a situation where other people do it and then the UK simply buys off the shelf technologies?
I think there is a sort of view that is possible. I get 2 responses to that. One is that if you look around the world, many countries are in similar difficulties to the ones we're facing here in terms of plans announced and then delayed repeatedly. You see it in many US plants. Germany, CCS is now off the agenda. In the Netherlands, CCS is now off the agenda because of opposition to onshore storage. Largely, there is a plan going forward, which Stuart mentioned. But what I've noticed that through the 2 years we've been doing this is just a continuing slippage of plans in many countries. And although China is doing it, they're doing it at a pilot scale. And if I talk to Chinese power companies, because I work in China a lot, they say there's no way we're going to fit this technology. All it is a big cost. We lose a quarter of the power we would generate. Otherwise, we'll invest all this money in for what? So that's one response. Another is that if the UK is going to be an informed buyer and user of that technology, you can't just leave it to others and buy it in. And also, it gives us another option on the table for climate change mitigation. And if you're looking at a future where perhaps you have nuclear plants on base load, and I'm not advocating this particularly, intermittent renewables, then you need something in the middle, so the advocates say, to actually balance the system. And CCS potentially, and I say potentially, can do that, but there are technical issues with it. Also, there's the jobs argument. I think sometimes that's oversold, but there is a first mover advantage possibility as well. And if everybody's waiting for everybody else, the question is, will this technology get demonstrated, and will we know that it's an option on the table at a price that we can afford? So I suppose you're playing Russian roulette, really, if you're just waiting for everybody else.
Can I just have one addendum to that? There is a European Commission project in the UK, isn't there? Plant in Yorkshire, which is
the Don Valley project has received funding from the EDPR, the restructuring package. That's basically to do with the engineering design stage, so that's not enough to carry it forward into a full project. And that project is amongst the maybe 5 or 6 projects which will be bidding into the debt round at the present time to try and get some additional funding. I'll just point on why should we bother. Well, we should bother because there's a moral responsibility, of course, because we invented the Industrial Revolution exploiting coal and steam engines, so that may not pay rent now, but there is a moral responsibility to do that. And secondly, if we don't do it, exactly as Jim says, we're not an informed buyer. A lot of the components, even for these first generation experimental plants, will come from multinational companies, so there'll be a shared global learning out of that, and we can participate in that. And crucially, if we're interested in the storage is not portable, it can't be relocated, it can't move from country to country, and we have a huge offer to make from the UK into a European market.
Okay, thanks. Julian.
Julian Mahalo, BBC Current Affairs. I know you're not city people, but are the investment uncertainties here not very similar in many ways to those afflicting nuclear power? You know, we began to hear about this nuclear renaissance 10 or 12 years ago. Lots of confident predictions, but actually stuttering in the States, stuttering in Europe, France, Finland, and certainly stuttering in Britain with these, joint venture sort of pulling out a few weeks ago. And it seems like the time scale and the type of uncertainties are very, very comparable in a way. And so you have these two big changes that have been predicted and to some extent are being relied upon by people in the government departments to, create a large part of our carbon sort of abatement, which are still they're not even lumbering along the runway, really. They're sort of trying to get somewhere near the runway and, having to turn back towards the hangar every now and then. Well, sorry, I'm trying to answer the question without asking it properly. But how do you think?
Well, I'll start and I'll bring Phil in because he's been, he's a lot of issues with investors for the project. But my view is yes, they're comparable, but actually CCS is in a more difficult position than nuclear in the sense that nuclear power has been under development for many decades, including mass deployment in some countries for several decades, whereas CCS is still at that stage of being scaled up to the full-scale plant. You can't point at a full-scale power plant with a CCS plant, the pipeline, and the storage, as rightly said. So I think that compounds the difficulties. And so we're in a demonstration phase, and we're very clear in the report that we think government should just get on and do that and make that happen in order that we know whether we're in that position where CCS is a contender. But even if that were to happen, you've still got a very essentially capital-intensive technology, which would have the kinds of financial risks that many city investors are going to worry quite a lot about. But maybe Phil will stop there.
Well, I think you covered a lot of it there, but I would say there are similarities. Yes, they're both high capital cost. The CCS has an additional problem in the sense that there is a significant fuel price risk. Whilst the nuclear power stations need fuel, there isn't the same fuel price risk because fuel is a much smaller component of the overall cost per unit of electricity generated. But for a CCS plant, you have to buy fossil fuel. There is a significant fuel price risk. Having said that, CCS have the opportunity to bring unique system benefits of being flexible, low carbon generation. And I think it's important that whatever mechanism the government chooses to support technologies recognises the benefits which particular technology can bring, and it's important that the EMR process provides sufficient additional benefit for CCS that recognises the CCS's advantages to the system, the electricity system.
And Stuart Hazeldine would like to add a couple of points. With nuclear power and CCS, in some ways, yes, there are similarities, because they're both dealing with long-term technology development, and in the UK we're historically quite bad at doing that at the moment. We don't have pensions for 5 years, let alone 20 years, which some of this might take. With nuclear we have a track record, we know it's hugely expensive, and so